All right, hello everyone. I am Storm, and I'm here with Hope, and
Hello, everyone.
this is going to be our quantitative literacy final project. So first off, I'll start. Hope, what is the relativity of size?
It is the size compared against something. So as you can see here, I've done the screenshot of one of our assignments, and you can tell here Texas is up against like Pluto and Iris and even California. So it is the size of something compared to another size, and we have to have a starting point to be measured up against something. So, and then on the next slide, you can see that we have the speed, and that is going to be the relativity of speed of how fast the Earth is moving around us. So it's crazy to think that we are moving at 7,500,537 miles an hour. That's what the Earth is moving. That's what we're moving in rotation. So as you can tell here, we have body movement, Earth rotation, Earth orbit, the solar system, and then all that is added up to get what we are moving now.
Okay, very good.
Okay, Storm, what is an asymptote?
An asymptote is a point on a graph that gets really close near the end of the graph but never actually touches. So for example, I've got the half-life of ibuprofen here showing.
Right.
Every 1.9 hours is our half-life. And so we divide that number that we've got, the 800 milligrams that we start off with, in half, down to 400, down to 200, and we're infinitely dividing that number in half. And so because of that, the half-life of ibuprofen is an asymptote, because this number will never actually touch our x-axis, which that brings us to how many times can a number be divided by 2. And like I said on the previous slide, any number can be divided by 2 an infinite number of times, and that's eventually what creates that asymptote, which we talked about.
Very good.
All right, what is theoretical and empirical probability?
Okay, so in data science, the word empirical means observe. So empirical distribution, or distribution of data that is in random samples. So it is given by the number of times something occurs, or divided by the total number of incidents observed. Theoretical probability, on the other hand, is given by the number of ways a particular event can occur, divided by the total number of possible outcomes. So as you can see here, I created several graphs in Excel, and then so here were like the prime numbers, and so I have that numbers highlighted that are prime numbers, and then down here is the odds against, probability, reduced fractions, and so then I added all of my graphs up and got the odds and odds against and so on. So then in the next slide, we have the law of large numbers. So it's in probability theory, like I said, the law of large numbers is described as the result of performing the same task or large number multiple times. So as you can tell here, the dice rolls, we created like how many times a dice would roll, and what would the sum be, and that would be the law of large numbers. So Storm, how can graphs influence thoughts?
So graphs can influence thoughts in a bunch of different ways, and I like to talk about how you structure a graph can actually interpret your data in a different way. So in the graph on the right, we're looking at the unemployment rate by percentages for the Clinton years and the Bush years, and in the left graph, we have the exact same data, just represented it in a different way. The low end of our y-axis, and the top end of our y-axis is not a very large range in our right graph, and on our
Right.
left graph is 0 to 6, what you might imagine a graph to look like, whereas the graph on our left shows a 0.2% difference. And so it appears in the left graph that there was a large disparity between the Clinton years and the Bush years, when actuality, as represented in the right graph, that there was not.
Very good.
Additionally, I used a graph that we created in Excel to also describe this disparity with bowlers. On the left, we have the graph that only shows a range of a score of 106 to 126. And because that range is so low, it makes it appear as if Dana, Hilda, and Emily had large gaps between their scores, when in actuality, they were all in between the 100 and 150 range, as the graph on the left represents.
Very nice. Good.
All right, so can you explain to me GMOs, crops, and various diseases, please?
So here we have on the left-hand side, we have deaths due to infection, or and then on the right on the graph, we have number of children with autism. So as you can tell here, it's done in years, deaths per 1,000, and then acres. So in the graphs we've created, it shows that more acres of crops that are grown, the more people that get diseases. So that's what that shows on the left-hand side. And then on the, we have a graph there in the, beside the one on the left. And you can tell that the more years that go on, the more acres that are grown. And then the orange line shows the acres, and the blue lines show the deaths per 100,000. It's kind of the same on the right-hand side as well. We have the years, the number of children with autism, and then the chemical applied to corn and soy. And then you can tell in the blue bars, that was the number of children. So the more that rises, or the more that the orange line rises, you can tell that the blue bars kind of go up with that. So they're showing that there's a very much they grow together in that. And so on the next slide, we have the data reported by the FDA. And so you can tell in the years on my graph that I created in Excel from 1996 to 2012 that
sorry.
That's good.
Oh no.
That's fine. We'll get back to it.
May have to restart the slideshow.
It's good.
1 second. We were talking about GMOs, right?
Right. We're talking about the data that the FDA has gathered.
Okay, here we go. All right, there we go. And my screen sharing stopped for some reason.
We can pause Zoom and get it worked out if you'd like.
All right. Okay. I think we're back on.
Okay, there we go. We got it back. Okay. So as I was saying here, we've got years from 1996 to 2012. And then the GE corn and soy goes from 6% in 1996 all the way up to 89%. And so you can go through there and tell that in 1996, the percentage was very low. And then now in 2012, the lowest one is 88%. So you can tell in my graph that I created on the right-hand side, the percentages are on the left-hand side, and then at the bottom, it's the years. And then the lines and the colors represent. So you can tell that there is just a direct rise over the years, with really GE soy leading pretty much the whole time, except just about a year there in 2000, 2001. So then for Storm, what is the probability of binomial experiments?
Okay, so they asked what is the probability of guessing correctly on a true or false test? So in Excel, we used these three formulas to recreate that experiment. And that experiment is a binomial experiment because it asks us one or two things. Is it true or is it false? And then here at the very top, I show the actual formula that we used to get these calculations.
Right.
And so, the actual probability of getting an 80% was the amount that they required from us, was a 0.04% to get an 80% using that binomial experiment.
Very good.
All right. And so then we were asked, what are your chances to hit big in the lottery? So in short, it's not likely. But examining our data here, we have the 1 in 4 chance of winning a 5% or a $5 scratch off, 1 in 6, 1 in 160 chance to win $25, and so on and so forth. And we actually calculated our law of large numbers to come up with, if we spent $100,000 and we won, $99,905, it would take us, in order to win that $100,000, we'd actually have to spend $100,000. So in actuality, we only won 7 cents.
Right. That's crazy to think.
All right. So can you explain to me the obesity in America?
Yes. So the obesity, we can tell here and being obese in America with type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. Number of Americans in millions that are obese is 93.3. So overall, just a rough average is there's about 326, or that's just a number that we plugged in, 26.2 million Americans. So obviously that's not correct. So type 2 diabetes, we have 34.3 million. High blood pressure, 106.7, and so on. So as you can tell here over on the right, I created a diagram. So with all three of those combined, there's roughly 27.7 million Americans that have obesity, type 2 diabetes, and high blood pressure. So as you can see, the majority of people that have one, a lot of them have all three. So percent of Americans that have all three is 9% of overall Americans. So, and then in the next slide, we have impaired U.S. driving. So sorry. No, that's my bad. That's my bad. So we have the obesity rate in America of where we live. So I got gathered the information for Arkansas. So Arkansas is one of the most unhealthy states. It's ranked 7 out of 51. So it's one of the most unhealthy. Arkansas has an obesity rate of 35%, whereas Colorado which is one of the healthier states, has a rate of 22.6 obesity. So it's, as you can tell here, type 2 diabetes percentage of Arkansans that have it is 10.5, high blood pressure 42%. So Arkansas is definitely one of the more unhealthy states. So, okay, Storm, can you explain what impaired U.S. driving, please?
All right. So we were asked to talk about the fatalities for impaired driving. And so I grabbed a graph that we created, and this shows the deaths by age, 0 to 4, not very many, 5 to 15, not very many, 16 to 17, not very many, 18 to 20. That's really the sweet spot when kids start driving. And so there's about 5 deaths there, and so on and so forth. And then we looked at the fatalities by location, and I pulled this graph because they wanted to know, is it more likely that you're going to get in wreck in a rural area or a city area? And so the way this looks is it really doesn't, in 2019, there were a ton more deaths in rural areas than in 2018, but 2018 was pretty, they were pretty neck and neck. And the average was still pretty close.
Right.
And then we were talking about, and then we asked to talk about the impaired driving in British Columbia. So what this Venn diagram represents is when someone was in an accident, they tested them to see what was in their system in British Columbia. And so we've got alcohol, cannabis, other recreational drugs, and medications. And anywhere you see these ovals overlap was what was found in that person's system at the time of their accident. And so we had 9.7 people have alcohol, or percent, that should be a percentage there, I apologize. 1.6% had alcohol and cannabis, and so on and so forth. And so they asked us to kind of compare if we could use the British Columbia information and bring it to America. And I believe there's a couple of problems with that. One is population density. I believe that the population density would have something to do because we would have more, depending on the area, have more people on the roads, whereas in Arkansas, in rural Arkansas, you don't have near as many people. And in British Columbia, same thing. We just don't know where this data was collected. So with the data that we have, I think it'd be really difficult to try to transfer that and mirror that into the United States population.
Very good.
Also, to think about is the legal drinking age. I know in England it's 18, and here in the United States it's 21. So that would have a little bit of impact on our data as well.
Very good.
All right, so Hope, approving of the president, depending on which party by Americans belongs to. Can you explain this slide to us?
Yes. So we did this in Excel on one of our assignments, and we just did the current president so we could get more accurate figures. But if there's a Democrat in the office or something, these numbers will just probably fluctuate depending on whoever's in office. So here we have we base the things off of President Trump, and so the current U.S. population we have there, and so then percentage. These were the percentage of Republicans that approved. So on the left-hand side, I have 87%, disapproval is 21%, and then no data is 1%. And then I created a 3D pie chart for that. And then on the right-hand side, we have the only 8% of Democrats that approve, 90% disapprove, and 2% no data. So, and then there again, I created a 3D pie chart to show the disapproval, the approval. So as you can tell, the orange is the disapproval on both. The approval is blue. And then so you can see there's a stark difference. But like I said, just depending on who's in the White House at the time, showing who the approval or whatever. So then on the next slide, we have the probability of being a woman or a man in different branches of the military. So we have the total in the Army is roughly all three or all four branches of the military, Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force, is roughly 288,596. So the percentage of women in all four branches is around 33%. So when you combine them all, or the average would be that. So number of men, the percentage would be 67%. So as you can tell, we created a chart. So there is not as many women in the Marines as per se maybe the Air Force or the Navy. So the Marines is the least women are in that than in the other branches.
Right.
Okay, Storm, can you explain the standard deviation, please?
All right. So standard deviation is basically the number to what extent that the data deviates from. So to kind of explain and show standard deviation, I used a scatter plot for Army heights, the heights of Army recruits in inches and the height of random mall shoppers in inches. On the left, you see that the dots are very pretty close to one another, scattered in between 80 and 65 inches here. And you see this nice line shooting through the two of those. So I would speculate the standard deviation is pretty low, or at least much lower than in the height of of random mall shoppers. Because here you can see there was a 32 inches or 33 inches, whatever, 76 inches here, you know, and they're just kind of scattered all about, and that standard deviation would be much greater. And so, like I explained, the standard deviation for height of Army recruits is about 4 inches, whereas the standard deviation for height of random mall shoppers was 14 inches. And you can see it pretty clearly here in this box and whiskers plot, because the tops ends and bottom ends of our data are pretty tight, and our box is pretty narrow. Whereas here on our height of random mall shoppers, our low end is much lower and our high end is much higher, and our box is very fat, meaning our standard deviation's much greater.
Right, very good.
All right, what is the probability of belonging to each age group and using distracting device while driving and texting?
Yes, so as you can tell, again, I have a graph that was, or the data was collected from 2007 to 2016, and actually the percentages of the people using a device while driving has gone down over the years, surprisingly. But as you can tell, that the most were the 16 to 24-year-olds, being in the blue line, and then the 25 to 69 were the orange line, and the 70 plus were the gray line. So as you can tell, not many 70 plus year olds use a device while driving. More teenagers and young adults, but teenagers being the main. But thank goodness it has gone down over the years since 2007 to 2016. So in the next task, or in the next slide, we have the scatter plot and trend line width of a box and whisker plot, and then the bell-shaped curve. So we took the same data that we just had, that we collected, and we created the bell-shaped curve, the box and whisker plot, and then the scatter plot with trend lines. So as you can tell with the scatter plot with trend lines, that it's just downwards from 9% all the way down to almost 4% over the years. So these were all of the 16 to 24-year-olds. And then as you can tell with the box and whisker plot as well, that there was a pretty big gap because of how many people were doing it, the percentages, but it has gone down over the years as well. And then the same with the bell-shaped curve. It shows that since 2006, it's gone down. So it's always a good thing when there's less people with devices on the road.
Right.
Okay, Storm, can you explain the body mass index, please?
All right. So in our projects throughout the year, we were asked to gather data on body mass index for people in the United States. And so I pulled a graph. This is our bell-shaped curve for American men. And so they asked us, what is the likelihood of having a healthy body mass index? And so I did a quick Google search and found that the healthy body mass index is between 19 and 24%, or 19 and 24. And so if you look at our bell-shaped curve, basically everything to the left of where this black line is, just about probably closer to about right here, is going to be our
Healthy.
healthy, right, our healthy portion of our bell-shaped curve. And that's going to equate to approximately 25%. There's a 25% chance that you're going to have a healthy body weight according to our healthy body mass index.
Right.
All right, and so my body mass index is actually 24.3, meaning I'm just outside the healthy range to the right. I am 0.3 points from being a healthy American man.
Very good.
All right, the outliers that keep the distribution of American income from being normal. Can you explain to us, please?
Yes. So as you can see in these graphs, that in the first one, that only 1% of the household has a high income. So when you throw an outlier in the mean and median, they completely different. So as you can see that the graph that we snipped in here on the bottom, that at the very end, there is a rise. So it's hard for us to get, that's an outlier that keeps the distribution being normal, because we cannot get the right mean and median of the distribution of U.S. wealth.
Right.
So in the next slide, the struggle of starting a business related to the distribution of Americans' income. So we can see that when starting a business, you start off at 0 or below 0. And then you drop, and then it takes a while to get back up. So it's not just a steady incline. A lot of times you drop before you start going back up and hit even, and then even above that start gaining. So it's not just a steady increase. A lot of people think when you start a business, you automatically start making money. But a lot of times you go in the negative even more before you start climbing up again. So.
Right.
Okay, Storm. What inequality what wealth inequality in America?
All right, so we were asked to explain the wealth inequality in America. And so I pulled 2 pieces of information from our work that we did over the year. One is this households in wealth group and the owner of the U.S. wealth. And as you can tell, 1% of the population of the United States controls about 35% of the United States wealth. And that is represented over here in this graph. And then about 4% of people control 27%, 5% control 13%, 10% control 12%, and all the way at the very bottom, about 40%, 40% of the population. That's just outrageous to me that only 40% of the or a large number, like 40% of the United States population, only carries not even 1% of the wealth in the United States. All right, and so what do we do with this money that's getting taxed that we're working for? Well, I pulled out the U.S. tax budget that I created for our Excel worksheet, and 24% goes to Social Security, 16% goes to our defense and national assistance. So that's like our military, and then whatever programs we use to go over to other countries and aid them, whether that be in war or building, things of that nature. Medicare, Medicaid, and subsidies, 26%. Safety net programs, interest on debt, 6%. VA benefits, 8%. Transportation and infrastructure, only 2%. Education, only 2%. Science and research, only 2% again. To me, I just can't believe that education and science and research and infrastructure, even stuff that we use every single day, that stuff only gets 2%. But our military budget is, you could take the next 10 highest military budgets around the world, the next 10, add them up, and they wouldn't be as much as our military budget.
So. No, it's crazy.
All right, what are the different ways we pay taxes?
Okay, so the different ways that we can pay taxes. So you can pay head of household, single, or marriage, or filing jointly when you come to filing for your taxes. So as you can tell, that those are the three ways that you can file for taxes. And then after that, a lot of times people, depends on how much you make, whether you want to pay or file for head of household or marriage or filing jointly. Of course, if you're single, you got to file single. But that is the different ways that you can file for taxes. And then in the next slide, we see that the tax bracket. How does that work? So you can tell that. Say you made $50,000 a year, you paid $10,000 in taxes, and the leftover you had 39,190. But if you had a pay raise, then you say you made 2,000 more a year, you would have more. You would fall in a different tax percentage, and you would have to pay more taxes, but you would not have as much left over. So you have to decide whether that it is best to pay or to take the pay raise, because in the end you might make even less. So as you can tell in the bottom graph that I created, the bar graph, it is best a lot of time, or in this graph, to take the old pay instead of the new pay. So,
Right.
Okay. Storm, can you explain what simple interest means?
Absolutely. In the next two slides, I'm going to kind of explain simple interest versus compound interest. Basically, when you take a loan for something, they're going to charge you some amount for letting you borrow that money. So as you can see in the graph, simple interest, you only pay interest on the original amount that you took a loan out on. And so that's the greatest thing about simple interest is it doesn't increase in amount. It doesn't increase in amount. So compound interest, on the other hand, it does increase in amount, because not only are you paying interest on the original principal, you're also paying interest on the principal plus interest that you've already accrued. So that's kind of the key difference between compound interest and simple interest.
Very good.
All right, what is the difference between what a house costs and what you pay in the end with interest?
Okay, so as you can tell here, I created a graph in Excel. So say a house cost $120,000. The percentage down that you would pay would be 8%, or the actual amount would be $9,600. And as you can tell, you go along. So with interest, say you paid it off in 5 years. So the interest would be $14,000. $14,000 more dollars than you would actually were planning on spending. So you have just to decide the difference, or what if it's worth paying it out in more months, because it's only going to rise the price even more the more months that you pay off. So as you can tell in the next slide, we have the three different options for paying off your house in zero. If you paid $0 extra, $50 extra, or $100 extra a month. So say that you did not pay, or that you paid $0 extra a month. It would still be 239 months until payoff. The interest would be $63,000. So the total amount that you would pay would be $174. If you made monthly payments worth $100 extra, the monthly payment would be $829, and then the interest would be $87,731. So you just have to decide: would you rather pay it off in more months with more interest, or less months? It just depends on how much you're making per month, or on your budget. So. Okay, Storm, what is the cost of living in certain states?
All right. So in our studies, we were asked to create a budget in different areas around the United States, and kind of, figure out, what would we make if we moved there. And so what I did was I took my current state, Little Rock, roundabout. I took the DC Metro, which specifically the Greenbelt area, because as I researched, Greenbelt area was one of the cheaper as far as home ownership areas, and then Denver, Colorado. Now I kind of cheated whenever I went to Metro or the DC Metro, because I cut out a vehicle payment and insurance payment for that vehicle, and instead just signed up for the monthly Metro. So you can get the monthly Metro cost for $240 a month. And so while you're not paying to own a vehicle, you're also don't have to pay interest, and it's a lot cheaper than owning a vehicle. And so I kind of cheated there. Monthly here in Little Rock, 41,000 or 4,154. Monthly in DC, nearly $5,000, and monthly in Denver, nearly 4,500. And this is for an accountant, basically an entry-level accountant is what I based my data off of. And so what I chose to do is I chose Greenbelt as my place that would be of the most benefit, because as I took my monthly salary, of course I deducted the tax out of it and got this monthly wage. After I deducted all of my deductions, I had the most remaining income, the most savings out of this area. So the wage was higher than any other place. Cost of living was slightly higher, but in the end, I was able to cut some costs and come out nearly 600 or 700 ahead of any of the other places.
Very good.
All right, and so that concludes our PowerPoint presentation for this, and we appreciate y'all watching.
Bye, everyone.
All right. I
Says
hope.
still recording.
Yeah. Okay.